radio. But yesterday we lost musical legend and icon Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne passed away yesterday at the age of 76 with no cause of death yet given, but people are coming up with their theories as to what killed him. Um, he did have a history of drug and alcohol abuse earlier on in his career. Who knows how much damage that could have done to his body. Also, several years ago, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and that could have been a factor also, but nobody really knows. Um, Ozzy Osbourne was born John Michael Osbourne on December 3rd, 1948, and he died yesterday, July 22nd, 2025, at the age of 76. He was from England because he's a British singer, songwriter, and media personality. And he rose to prominence during the 70s as the lead vocalist of the heavy metal band Black Sabbath, during which he adopted the nickname Prince of Darkness. Um, the band Black Sabbath was formed in 1968, providing lead vocals from their eponymous debut studio album in 1970, to Never Say Die. In 1978, the band was highly influential in the development of heavy metal music, in particular their critically acclaimed releases Paranoid back in 1970. Then you had Master of Reality in 71 and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath in 1973. Eventually, Black Sabbath got tired of Ozzy Osbourne being drunk and high during a lot of the recordings and tours, and they fired him from the band. Which eventually would lead him to go on to a big-time solo career. So Osbourne was fired from Black Sabbath in 1979 due to his problems with alcohol and drugs. He then began a successful solo career with the Blizzard of Oz in 1980, and he would release 13 studio albums to date. The first 7 of which received multi-platinum certifications in the United States, and eventually he would reunite with Black Sabbath on several different occasions. And he rejoined in 1997 and helped to record the band's final studio album, which was titled 13, in 2013, before they embarked on a farewell tour that ended with the 2017 performance in their native Birmingham, England. So on July 5th, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne performed his final show at the Back to the Beginning concert event amid ongoing health issues, having announced earlier in the year that he would retire and that it would be his last performance. And though he intended to continue recording music, he would die 3 weeks later on July 22nd, 2025. Ozzy sold over 100 million albums, including his solo work and Black Sabbath releases. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of Black Sabbath in 2006 and as a solo artist in 2024, which is a big achievement. He was also inducted into the United Kingdom Music Hall of Fame, both as a solo artist and as a member of Black Sabbath in 2005. He was honored with stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame and Birmingham Walk of Stars at the 2014 MTV Europe Music Awards. He received the Global Icon Award. In 2015, he received the Ivor Novello Award for Lifetime Achievement from the British Academy of Songwriters, Composers, and Authors. In early 2000s, he became a reality television star when he appeared in the MTV reality show The Osbournes alongside his wife Sharon and 2 of their children, Kelly and Jack. He co-starred with Jack and Kelly in the television series Ozzy and Jack's World Detour, as well as The Osbournes Want to Believe with his wife Sharon and son Jack. Now, Ozzy was married twice, but he eventually would have 6 kids. The two well-known ones that people that know that he has are Kelly and Jack, but he has Amy and then 3 other ones outside of those 3. He was married twice. He married his first wife Velma in 71, and they divorced in 82. And then that same year, he married Sharon and would stay married to her until his death. Um, Ozzy Osbourne, who was born John Michael Osbourne, was born at the maternity hospital in Marston Green, which was in Warwickshire, England, on December 3rd of 1948. He grew up in the Aston area of Birmingham, England. His mother Lillian was born in 1916, died in 2001, was a non-observant Catholic who worked at something called Lucas Factory, which I'm not sure what that is. His father John Osbourne was born in 1915, died in 1977. Worked as a toolmaker at the General Electric Company. Now, Ozzy had three older sisters, Jean, Iris, and Jillian, and two older brothers named Paul and Tony. Now, the family lived in a small two-bedroom home at 14 Lodge Road in Aston, but Osbourne gained the nickname Ozzy as a child. He dealt with dyslexia at school, and his accent was described as hesitant brummy, whatever brummy means. Um, at the age of 11, he suffered sexual abuse from school bullies, which is kind of something that nobody really knew about, and I didn't even know that he was. I knew he was bullied, but I didn't know that he ever suffered sexual abuse from bullies. Um, um, Ozzy did admit that at a time he felt down and dealt with depression, and that he said he attempted suicide multiple times as a teenager, which was kept quiet and nobody ever knew about that one either. At least I didn't. He participated in school plays, including Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado and HMS Pinafore. Um, Upon hearing the first hit single of the Beatles at age 14, he became a fan of the band and credited their 1963 song "She Loves You" with inspiring him to become a musician. There was a documentary in 2011 called "God Bless Ozzy Osbourne." Osbourne said that the Beatles made him realize that he was going to be a rock star the rest of his life. Um, Ozzy would drop out of school at the age of 15 and work as a construction site laborer, a trainee plumber, apprentice toolmaker, car factory horn tuner, and slaughterhouse worker. At the age of 17, he was convicted of robbing a clothes store, but was unable to pay the fine. His father also refused to pay, so that he can teach him a lesson. Resulted in Osbourne spending 6 weeks in Winson Green prison. Um, in late 1967, Geezer Butler formed his first band, Rare Breed, and recruited Osbourne to be the lead singer. The band played 2 shows and then eventually broke up. Osbourne and Butler reunited in another band called Polka Tulk Tunes, which included guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward, whose band Mythology had recently broken up. They renamed the band Earth, but after being accidentally booked for a show instead of a different band with the same name, they decided to change the band's name again, this time settling on Black Sabbath in August of 1969. The band's name was inspired by the film of the same title, which I've never heard of the movie Black Sabbath, but Black Sabbath noticed how people enjoyed being frightened during their appearances, which inspired their decision to play a heavier blues style of music laced with gloomy sounds and lyrics. Now, while recording their first album, Butler read an occult book and woke up seeing a dark figure at the end of his bed, and Butler told Osbourne about it, and together they wrote the lyrics to Black Sabbath, the first song in a darker vein. Now, the band's U.S. record label, Warner Brothers Records, invested only modestly in it. But Black Sabbath met with swift and enduring success, built around Tony's guitar riffs, Geezer Butler's lyrics, Bill Ward's dark tempo drum beats, and topped by Ozzy Osbourne's eerie vocals. Their debut albums, Black Sabbath and Paranoid, were commercially successful, and they gained considerable amounts of airplay, of radio airplay, basically. Now, Osbourne recalled, however, that in those days the band wasn't very popular with the women because they were kind of creepy, and like women, I don't know if they're drawn to that. Um, at about this time, Osbourne first met his future wife Sharon, um, who was going to be his second wife, Sharon Arden. After the unexpected success of their first album, Black Sabbath, were considering her father Don Arden as the new manager, and Sharon was at that time working as Don's receptionist. Osbourne admits he was attracted to her immediately, but assumed that she probably felt that he was a lunatic. Um, Osbourne later recalled that the best thing about eventually choosing Don Arden as a manager was that he got to see Sharon regularly, though their relationship at first was strictly professional at that point because Ozzy was already married to somebody else named Thelma. Um, just 5 months after the release of their album Paranoid, the band would release a second album, Master of Reality. The album reached the top 10 in both the United States and UK and was certified gold in less than 2 months. In the 1980s, it received platinum certification, and it went double platinum in the early 21st century. Reviews of this album were unfavorable. Lester Bangs of Rolling Stone famously dismissed Master of Reality as naive, simplistic, repetitive, and absolute doggerel. Although the very same magazine would later place the album at number 298 on their 500 greatest albums of all time, that was compiled and chosen three. Um, Now, in September of 1972, Black Sabbath would release the album Black Sabbath Volume 4, and critics were dismissive of the album. However, that album reached gold status in less than a month, and it was the band's fourth consecutive album to sell over 1 million copies in the United States alone. Um, in November of 1973, Black Sabbath released the critically acclaimed Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album for the first time. Now, the band received favorable reviews in the mainstream press. Gordon Fletcher of Rolling Stone called the album an extraordinary, gripping affair and nothing less than a complete success. Decades later, AllMusic's Eduardo Rivadavia called the album a masterpiece, essential to any heavy metal collection, while also claiming the band displayed a newfound sense of finesse and maturity. Over the time, their music got better. The album marked the band's fifth consecutive platinum-selling album in the U.S. Sabotage was released in 1975, and again, there was favorable reviews on that album. Rolling Stone stated Sabotage is not only Black Sabbath's best record since Paranoid, but it might be their best album ever. Um, in retrospect, AllMusic was less favorable, noting that the magical chemistry that made such albums as Paranoid and Volume 4 so special was beginning to disintegrate. Technical Ecstasy, released on September 25th of 1976, was also met with mixed reviews. AllMusic gives the album 2 stars and notes that the band was unraveling at an alarming rate. Between the years of 1977 and early 1978, Osbourne left the band for 3 months to pursue a solo project called Blizzard of Oz, a title which had been suggested by his father, and 3 members of the band Necromandus, who had supported Black Sabbath in Birmingham when they were called Earth, backed Osbourne in the studio and briefly became the first incarnation of his solo band. At the request of the other band members, Osbourne rejoined Black Sabbath, and the band spent 5 months at Sounds Interchange Studios in Toronto, Canada, where they wrote and recorded their next album, Never Say Die. It took quite a long time. Tony said of Never Say Die. We were getting really drugged out, doing a lot of cocaine and dope or whatever. But we'd go down to the sessions and have to pack up because we were too stoned, and we'd have to stop. Nobody could get anything right. We were all over the place, and everybody was playing a different thing. And we'd go back to sleep and sleep it off, and then try again the next day. In 1978, Black Sabbath began the Never Say Die tour with Van Halen as an opening act. The reviewers called Sabbath's performance tired and uninspired, in stark contrast to the youthful performance of Van Halen, who was touring the world for the first time. Now the band recorded their concert at Hammersmith Odeon in June of 1978, which was released on video as Never Say Die, the final show of the tour, and Osbourne's last appearance with Black Sabbath for another 7 years until 1985, until they recorded in Albuquerque, New York, on December 11th of that year. Now, in 1979, Black Sabbath returned to the studio, but tension and conflict arose between the band members and Ozzy. Ozzy had recalled being asked to record his vocals over and over again, and tracks were manipulated endlessly by Tony. The relationship between Osbourne and Tony became contentious, meaning they started to have a falling out. On April 27th of 1979, on April 27th of 1979, at Tony's insistence, but with the support of Butler and Ward, Ozzy Osbourne was fired from Black Sabbath. Now, the reasons provided to him were that he was unreliable and had a constant abuse of drugs and alcohol. Compared to the other members, Osbourne maintained that his use of alcohol, drugs, and tobacco and other drugs at that time was similar to that of the other members. The band would replace Ozzy with the former Rainbow singer Ronnie James Dio in a August 21st, 1987 interview with Tommy Vance on BBC Radio's One Black Friday Rock Show. Dio said, "I was not and never will be Ozzy Osbourne. He was the vocalist and songwriter in that era who helped create that band and make it what it is, and what it is in its classic form." Um, The conflict between Tony and Osbourne commenced almost immediately in their work in collaboration, responding to a flyer that read, "Ozzy Zig needs gig, has own PA," whatever that meant, um, which was posted by Ozzy in a record store. Tony and Ward arrived at the listed address to speak with Ozzy, as he then called himself. But now, when Tony saw Ozzy Osbourne emerge from another room of the house, he recalled that he knew him as a pest from their school days. And Tony recalls one incident in the early 70s in which Osbourne and Butler were fighting in a hotel room, and Tony pulled Osbourne off Butler in an attempt to break up the drunken fight, and the vocalist proceeded to turn around and take a wild swing at him, and Tony responded by knocking Osbourne unconscious with one punch to the jaw. At least that's what happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. Um, Now, following two brief short set reunions for Live Aid in 1985, and at an Ozzy Osbourne show in Costa Mesa, California, on November 15th of 1992, Ozzy Osbourne, Tony, and Butler formally reunited as Black Sabbath in 1987 for the 1997 Ozfest shows. Um, Ward would be absent in this case due to the health issues that he was battling at that time. Um, in December of 1997, all four members of the band reunited to record the studio album Reunion, with Osbourne also touring with the band again from 1997 to 1999 for the album's concert tour. Now, the album proved to be a commercial success upon its release in October of 1998. Now, the original Black Sabbath lineup of Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill reunited in November of 2011 for a world tour and a new album. Ward had to drop out for contractual reasons, so the project continued with Rage Against the Machine's Brad Wilk stepping in for Ward on the drums, and they played their first reunion concert on May of 2012 at the O2 Academy in their hometown of Birmingham, England. Now, the album, entitled 13, was released on June 11th of 2013, and it topped both the UK albums chart and the US chart, Billboard 200. Um, In 2016, the band began a farewell tour titled "The End," supposedly signifying the final performance of Black Sabbath. Um, the final shows of the End tour took place at the Gentine Arena in their home city of Birmingham on 2nd and 4th, with Tommy Clufetus replacing Bill Ward as the drummer for the final show. On August 8th of 2022, Osbourne and Tony made a surprise appearance during the closing ceremony of the 2022 Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, England, and this marked Osbourne's first live performance in almost 3 years, following a period of health issues that he was having. Ozzy played his final show, billed as "Back to the Beginning," alongside the original lineup of Black Sabbath at Villa Park in Birmingham on July 5th of 2025. The band and Osbourne each played a short set watched by a crowd of over 40,000 spectators and a peak livestream audience of 5.8 million people. He was having been unable to stand because of Parkinson's disease. Osbourne performed seated on a black throne. All proceeds from the event was donated equally to the Cure Parkinson's Trust, Birmingham Children's Hospital, and the Acorn Children's Hospice Care. Like I said, he was such a great guy, being able to donate all that money to charity funds. After being fired from Black Sabbath, Osbourne recalled, "I got $96,000 for my share of the name, so I just locked myself away and spent 3 months doing coke and booze. My thinking was, this is my last party, because after this I'm going back to Birmingham and the Dole." However, Don Arden signed him to Jet Records with the aim of recording new material. Arden dispatched his daughter Sharon to Los Angeles to look after Ozzy's needs, whatever they were, to protect his investment. Um, Arden initially hoped that Osbourne would return to Sabbath, who he was personally managing at that time, and he later attempted to convince the singer to name his new band Son of Sabbath, which Osbourne hated. Sharon attempted to convince Osbourne to form a supergroup with guitarist Gary Moore. When I lived in Los Angeles, Gary Moore said, Moore's band was called G-Force, and I helped him to audition music people. If drummers were trying out, I played guitar, and if a bassist came along, my drummer would help out. We felt sorry for him, basically. He was always hovering around trying to get me to join, and I wasn't having any of it. In late 1979, under the management of the Ardens, Osbourne formed the Blizzard of Oz, featuring drummer Lee Kerslake of Uriah Heep, bass player and lyricist Bob Hazley of Rainbow, and later Uriah Heep, keyboardist Don Airey of Rainbow and later Deep Purple, and guitarist Randy Rhoads of Quiet Riot. The record company eventually titled the group's debut album Blizzard of Oz, credited simply to Ozzy Osbourne, thus commencing his solo career. It was co-written with Daisley and Rhoads, but it brought Osbourne considerable success in his first solo effort. Though it was generally accepted that Osbourne and Rhoads started the band, Daisley later claimed that he and Osbourne formed the band in England before Rhoads officially had ever joined. Now, Blizzard of Oz is one of the few albums among the 100 bestsellers of the 1980s to have achieved multi-platinum status without the benefit of a top 40 single. As of August of 1997, it had achieved quadruple platinum status according to RIAA. Bill Ward said that he envied Ozzy's career, as he seemed to be coming around from whatever it was that he'd gone through, and he seemed to be on his way up again, making records and stuff. Basically, Ward said he envied him because Bill Ward wanted that, and he was bitter, and he had a thoroughly miserable time getting over this. Ozzy Osbourne's second album, Diary of a Madman, featured more songs co-written with Lee Kerslake for his work on his album, and Blizzard of Oz. Rhoads was ranked the 85th greatest guitarist of all time by Rolling Stone magazine in 2003. Now, this album is best known for the singles Over the Mountain and Flying High Again, and as Osbourne explains in his autobiography, was his personal favorite. Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo soon replaced Kerslake and Daisley, and Aldridge had been Osbourne's original choice for drummer, but a commitment to Gary Moore had made him unavailable. Okay, now I'm going to name several songs that Ozzy did that I like, and anybody who does join in and does make a comment will let me know what your favorite Ozzy Osbourne song is, if you like him and know him, and know his music, basically. So, 1 is Iron Man, 2, Flying High, then you have Over the Mountain, Bark at the Moon, Crazy Train, Mom, I'm Coming Home, and Mr. Crawley are several of the songs I like. You guys can have your own personal favorite of Ozzy. Now, if you like any of those songs, let me know. And let me know what your favorite personal is. Now, my personal favorite one is Crazy Train. Now, on March 19th of 1982, the band was in Florida for its Diary of a Madman tour. A week away from playing at Madison Square Garden in New York City, a light aircraft piloted by Andrew Aycock, the band's tour bus driver, Terry Rhoads, and Rachel Youngblood, the band's costume and makeup designer, crashed while performing low passes over the band's tour bus. The left wing of the aircraft clipped the bus, causing the plane to graze a tree and crash into the garage of a nearby mansion, and it killed Rhoads, Aycock, and Youngblood on impact. The crash was ruled the result of a poor judgment by the pilot in buzzing the bus and misjudging the clearance of obstacles. Experiencing firsthand the horrific death of his close friend and bandmate, Osbourne fell into a deep depression. The tour was eventually canceled for 2 weeks, where Osbourne, Sharon, and Aldridge would return to Los Angeles to take stock, while Sarzo remained in Florida with his family. Now, Gary Moore was the first to be approached to replace Rhoads, but he had refused. With a 2-week deadline to find a new guitarist and resume the tour, Robert Sarzo, the brother of the band's bassist Rudy Sarzo, was chosen to replace Rhodes, and former Gillan guitarist Bernie Tormé, however, flew to California from England um, with the promise from Jet Records that he had the job. And once Sharon realized that Jet Records had already paid Tormé in advance, he was reluctantly hired instead of Sarzo. The tour resumed on April 1st of 1982, but Tormé's blues-based style was highly unpopular with the fans. Now, after a handful of shows, he informed Sharon that he would be returning to England to continue his work on a solo album that he had begun working on before coming to America. Um, at an audition in a hotel room, Osbourne selected Night Ranger's Brad Gillis to finish the tour. The tour culminated in the release of the 1982 live album Speak of the Devil, which was recorded at the Ritz in New York City. That's another good one too. No More Tears. No More Tears is another good song. Um, Ozzy would also appear in several movies throughout his career. Um, he was in the movie. He was in the movie Private Parts, Little Nicky, and a few other ones. He also had that TV show, The Osbournes. Let's see if I can find anything on here about. Now the thing is, now Osbourne had over 15 tattoos, the earliest of which were the letters Ozzy across the knuckles of his left hand, and he created this himself as a teenager with a sewing needle and a lead pencil. A longtime fan of the comedy troupe Monty Python, which I never got into. In a 2010 interview with US Weekly, Osbourne stated that his favorite movie is Monty Python's Life of Brian. Um, Osbourne would suffer minor burns after a small house fire at his family home in Beverly Hills in January of 2013. On his 65th birthday, which was December 3rd, 2013, he asked the fans to celebrate his birthday by donating to the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity in London. Um, though Osbourne had been long accused of Satanism, the New York Times reported in 1992 that Ozzy was a practicing member of the Church of England, and he would pray before each show. Um, now, when it comes to relationships, Ozzy had 6 children, 3 from his first marriage to Thelma, and 3 from his marriage to Sharon. Um, in 1971, Ozzy met his first wife Thelma at a place called the Rum Runner, the Birmingham nightclub where she worked, and they were married that same year. And they were married later on that year, and the 2 children, Jessica and Lewis, were born soon after. Um, Osbourne also adopted Riley's 5-year-old son Elliot from a prior relationship. Now Osbourne later referred to his first marriage as a terrible mistake. His use of alcohol and other drugs, coupled with his frequent absences while touring with Black Sabbath, took a toll on the family life. Basically, his children later complained that he was not a good father. In the 2011 documentary film God Bless Ozzy, produced by his son Jack, Osbourne admitted that he could not even remember when Lewis and Jessica were ever born. Shit. Dave. Later in 1981, Osbourne would begin to date his manager Sharon, and guitarist Randy Rhoads predicted in 1981 that and Randy Rhoads, the guitarist, predicted in 1981 that the couple would eventually get married someday, despite their constant bickering and the fact that Osbourne was still married to Thelma at the time. So Ozzy and Sharon married on July 4th of 1982, and he later confessed that the Independence date that they married on was chosen so that he would never forget his anniversary. The couple had three children together: Amy, born on September 2nd of 1983; the daughter Kelly, born on October 27th of 1984; and their son Jack, who was born on November 8th of 1985. Um, yeah, those three kids were all born close together. Um, Now, after Jack was born, Osbourne claimed that Osbourne said that he had a vasectomy, but Osbourne had many grandchildren also. I'm not sure how many, but says he had many. Um, Osbourne had also wrote songs about his kids. Osbourne wrote a song about his daughter Amy, which appeared as a B-side on his seventh studio album Osmosis in 1995. At the end of the song, she can be heard saying, "I'll always be your angel," which is referring to the song's chorus lyrics. The song "My Little Man," which appears on Osmosis, was written about his son Jack. And Ozzy and his family would divide time between their homes in Buckinghamshire, England, and Los Angeles, California. Um, Um, now I don't obviously I wasn't around when this happened, but Ozzy Osbourne used tobacco, drugs, street drugs, and prescription drugs for most of his adult life. He admitted to Sounds in 1978. "I get high, I get fucked up, but what the hell's wrong with getting fucked up? There must be something wrong with the system if so many people have to get fucked up. I never take dope or anything before I go on stage. I'll smoke a joint or whatever afterwards." But Black Sabbath bandmate Tony said that while all the band were involved with alcohol and other drugs to various degrees in the 1970s, but Osbourne had the unhealthiest lifestyle of them all. And despite this, Tony said he was typically the only one left standing when the others were out for the count. Um, Longtime guitarist Zakk Wylde has attributed Osbourne's longevity in spite of decades of substance abuse to a very special kind of fortitude that's bigger than King Kong and Godzilla combined. Now, seriously, he's hard as nails, man. In 2010, during the interview on the Howard Stern show, Ozzy said that it took him 19 attempts to get his driving license because of his alcohol abuse. Um, Ozzy Osbourne first used cocaine back in 1971 at a hotel in Denver, Colorado, after a show Black Sabbath had done with Mountain. He states that Mountain's guitarist Leslie West introduced him to the drug. Um, though Leslie West was reluctant to take credit for introducing Ozzy Osbourne to cocaine, Ozzy Osbourne remembered the experience quite clearly. When you come from Aston and you fall in love with cocaine, you remember when you started. It's like having your first fuck. Osbourne said that upon first trying the drug, the world went a bit fuzzy after that. Um, Osbourne also claimed to have taken LSD for 2 years while being a member of Black Sabbath. And during the end of his time with the band, he said he got very drunk and very stoned every single day. Um, Now, Ozzy Osbourne's frequent substance abuse at times would cause friction with the band, which is understandable because if you're out constantly on drugs, they can't rely on you. Now, um, in 2005, Ozzy Osbourne experienced tremors for some years and linked them to his continuous drug use. In May of 2005, he found out that he was actually diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome, a genetic condition, the symptoms of which are similar to Parkinson's disease. Um, Now, Ozzy Osbourne had to take daily medication for the rest of his life to combat the involuntary shudders associated with the condition. He eventually did start showing mild hearing loss. Um, Now, Ozzy did say that Ozzy did say that he is considered Ozzy Osbourne is considered an icon of hard rock music, and one of the founding members of heavy metal music through his work with Black Sabbath. Now he disliked being categorized as metal, stating that while his band plays heavy, other bands that are considered metal are really heavy. When you get pigeonholed with a certain genre, it can be very difficult to do something a bit lighter, or an acoustic track, or whatever you want to do. Back in the day, it was always just rock music. It's still just rock. Now, outside of music, Osbourne and his family show, The Osbournes, is considered to be a pioneering reality television program which ushered in the era of shows focusing on celebrity family life. Um, no, hold on here. And like I said, Ozzy did have some acting roles. Not many, but he did have some. Um, he was an Awesome Powers Gold member and Little Nicky. I remember Little Nicky. Um, I'm not sure how the Prince of Darkness name came to be that he came up with, but Ozzy was on stage one time when somebody threw a bat up on stage. Ozzy claimed that he thought the bat was fake, and he bit the head off the bat, thinking it was rubber, and it wasn't. It was an actual live bat. Um, Ozzy Osbourne did have a couple songs with Post Malone. He also had a song with Elton John. With Post Malone, he had the songs "It's a Raid" and "Take What You Want." And I like the song "Take What You Want," but I have to hear "It's a Raid." I don't think I know that one. He did have the song "Ordinary Man" with Elton John. Um, well, I Don't Want to Stop is a good one too. So, for anybody that does tune in, if you missed the live show, you can comment even after it's posted. Let me know your favorite Ozzy song and what your favorite moment, basically, of Ozzy is, just by either telling a personal story, whether you've been to a concert of his. I was hoping to see him in concert one day, but that eventually didn't happen. So, but yeah, just let me know what your favorite song is by him, and whether it's just a rock song. It could be the ones he did with the rappers. Uh, and so again, like I said, he's got a lot of good music out there. Um, but yeah, but I'll see you guys next week when I find something else to record. Um, I'll let you guys know. So if you guys are so if you guys like this video, give a comment and like, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. RBW King, and let me know what you guys thought about the video. Smash that like and subscribe button for more videos like this, and we'll be back next week.